Welcome everybody. Um, Look at that. You see the trees around you? That's the reason you can breathe. And if you think it's a favor done just by the trees, all you got to do is breathe out and suddenly you discover you're feeding them. You're breathing out carbon dioxide, and that's a wonderful partnership. To be honest, here we are. I have two very wonderful, wonderful women that you're waiting to hear. But I will say this before they start, that we're passing through troubled times right now, very troubled times. Everybody knows about the floods, the droughts, the cyclones, and the diseases, and the XYZ. But my real constituency, the average age is 12, and I have to tell them the truth, but I cannot steal hope from them. So that is done the same way we hope to do today, which is tell you the truth about what's happening, but also tell you that nature is self-repairing and it'll fix itself, and it's not expecting us to sit down there and manicure it. It's expecting us to sit down there in wonder, stare at it and say, oh, how did this miracle ever take place? And that is what art is about, that's what writing is about. And all of us sitting over here, Anjum, thank you very much for organizing this. And I have to tell you that the one singular message that Sanctuary, the magazine that I run, gives to children is that it's not the engineers, it's not the politicians, it's not the bureaucrats, it's not the businessmen, it's not the big boys and big girls nowadays. It's actually the little things in life that are noted and written and spread by the artists, the thinkers, the poets, the writers, the performers. These are the people to remember. You know Michelangelo, but can you tell me who was at that point the prime minister equivalent? You won't be able to. You will not remember those people who came in after we decided that this is where humanity should go, this is what is good, this is what is bad. And Louise, you're one of those who's gone all over India to places even I haven't gone, and sacred trees, my God, we worship nature. We worship nature. This is not something that's to be sniffed at, you know. It's a huge thing as far as Tara Gandhi is concerned. She's a scientist, but how shall I tell you how passionate she is about this? Is what we need. We need knowledge with passion, and that's what both these women are going to share with you today. And what I would like very much more than what was just introduced there is, can we start with you, Louise? Tell them about yourself. Tell them what makes you tick.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm from Australia, and I was a lecturer, an academic at the University of New South Wales for 30 years. My emphasis has always been on the environment, so I would call myself an environmental educator and an environmental artist. But today I'm here to talk to you about trees and my love of trees and why we must protect them. We know that trees are absolutely essential to life. Forests are the lungs of the planet. But they're also essential to climate change. And one thing I recently discovered, which I didn't know prior, is that when governments talk about getting to net zero, they're actually relying on carbon sinks. And so if we keep deforesting, and of course the main carbon sinks are our forests and our oceans. So if we keep deforesting or keep polluting our oceans, those carbon sinks are not available, in which case governments are not going to reach net zero when they say they will. So this is why deforestation is really an issue that has to stop. I recently discovered, and you may have read also, that we have already reached 1.5 degrees of warming, and we're on the path to 2.7, which is a worry. But we can arrest this, and we must remain positive that we will arrest this. I tend to feel that we can't rely anymore on our governments to really save us, that we, the people, need to also start doing things, little things, that will help. So the problem is, for me, that deforestation is still occurring all across the globe, and this needs to stop. So one way I have looked at it, and it was something that I was inspired by from travelling in India, is using the focus of perception. So how we perceive the world around us directly influences how we respond to that world. If we see the world as separate to us, if we see the land or the trees as separate to us, we're less likely to protect it. And so we must see the connection between the natural world and us. So I'd like to just share before I start my slides, a very small story which illustrates that idea. When I was young, a child, I went to a dairy farm with my father and the local farmer. And this dairy farmer, we were in his paddock and there were hardly any trees at all. And there was one small copse of trees in the middle of the paddock. And he pointed to those trees and said, "I've got to get rid of that vermin." And I, thinking that he was talking about field rats, said, "Where are these field rats, you know, where?" And he said, no, I'm talking about those trees. So this farmer, who hardly had any trees on his paddock, felt that he perceived these trees as vermin, as something that should be eradicated. Then the first time I came to India, actually at the invitation of my sister, oh, I haven't got this, oh, there we go, no, back. So, the first time I came to India, I was taken to this site in Tamil Nadu, and I was absolutely struck by the transformation of these trees and how this was set amidst bushland. It wasn't necessarily revered in any way, but this particular area was revered because it was a site where women would go in wish for a husband. And so I'm sure you've witnessed these around the country. And basically all of the trees were covered with yellow turmeric, and then also these small nodules of turmeric, which was in wishing for to find a husband. But in the process of doing this, they had transformed these few little trees into a site of reverence. Where are we? So yeah, so I'll run through some of the slides. So why are individual trees venerated? I'm sure all of you know these things, but why are they venerated across the country? And when I talk about venerated, I'm talking about honouring. They are honouring the tree. But in this instance, it's again got to do with fertility and marriage. So women on the side of the road would venerate these trees and so these trees became kalpavrikshas. I'm sure you've heard of the kalpavriksha, which is the wish-fulfilling tree. And there's some more examples of that same tree with the tali, the marriage cords. Then, of course, when the trees became particularly auspicious, a temple would be built around the tree. And that's one thing I discovered in India, that very often the temples, the major temples, this is the Meenakshi temple, a very important temple in Tamil Nadu. What began was actually the tree. It wasn't the temple. The tree was considered so auspicious that they eventually built the temple. And the tree remained in the centre of the courtyard area. This is a very large temple. So in this instance, the people would also hang the baby cots, but in this instance, rather than being a cloth cot, they would be permanent structures that you could purchase outside of the temple with little dolls inside. But all around the tree, it was all to honour the tree. This is the same temple. And there were many other trees in the temple, and they would also have these little baby cots. And the turmeric, again, turmeric, very important use of that particular pigment. And of course there would be like a performative action. Women would actually circle the tree 3 times, and then they would put the turmeric on themselves, on the tree, and also on some of the naga cows, the snake gods, as part of the veneration of the tree, the honouring of the tree, in wish for fertility in this instance, in wish for fertility. Oh, okay, sorry. So I'll run through just now a few images that I found. I mean, I should mention, when I first discovered this practice, I became quite obsessed by it. I mean, as someone who wasn't born in India, someone who was born outside of India in Australia, I thought this is incredible practice, because most importantly, these trees are protected. And for me, it was an environmental, and is an environmental phenomenon. If we can protect trees in any way, shape or form, then we need to continue to do that. So these are just some other examples. Again, this is a tree in just in the rice field in Tamil Nadu that was decorated and protected. And this one is up north, and that is more for justice. So if you feel that there's been some injustice done to you or your family, you go to this particular, again, these are nature temples. So there's not necessarily physical structures, they are nature temples. And here you hang bells. And this is another site where all the trees, and this is just one of the trees, were decorated with sculptures and all sorts of paraphernalia. Again, these sites become hallowed. So the tree becomes, it's divine, it's a vessel for divine. Often they are decorated in this way because they believe deities live in the tree. So in a sense, they are temples. The trees become temples. This was an image I took in Odisha, and this was actually, you can see that the temple is actually built around the tree. So if you go inside that temple, the tree is actually inside the temple. And this was for safety. I was told that originally there had been a small shop at this site, and it was in Bhubaneswar in Odisha. And, oh, I've lost the image. Is it there? Oh, yeah. People would stop to buy something, and then they would venerate the tree to wish for a safe journey, because it was a very dangerous road. And then after time, the tree became so venerated that it enabled, I suppose, the sanctification of the tree, and the local priest actually built the temple around the tree. But it was the tree that was important. Now, also, trees are very important in relation to healing. This is actually a site where people would go if they had measles. And probably all of you know that the neem tree, for example, is very, very important. Apparently, there are 135 chemicals or compounds that have been able to be isolated from the neem tree. And it's interesting to note that in Sanskrit, arissa is the name for the neem tree, and please excuse my pronunciation if that's incorrect, which means reliever of sickness. So many people around the country understand and have understood for generations the medicinal value of the neem tree. You can see that here people are, they're gifting things like tridents and bells and ribbons to the deity who's believed to reside in this tree, to thank them for the reliever of, in this case, measles. And that's oh, sorry? Oh, speed it. Okay, so there's another example of that. Many of you might know of this particular site. That is the Parabrahma temple in Kerala. I don't know if I mentioned, I ended up travelling in 17 states of India. So all across the north, south, east, west of India, recording this practice. So this is a very famous site in Kerala. It's considered the equivalent to Lourdes in France. And of course also when it comes to death and afterlife, this is another important, the sacred Pinda tree in Gaya. Now, trees can be venerated. Some trees, of course, are venerated. They're naturally considered sacred, like the banyan, the peepal, and the neem. But then in other districts, they're considered sacred because of their utilitarian purpose in that state. So in Odisha, the bamboo was considered particularly auspicious. So this is a sacred bamboo grove that I visited, where the entire bamboo grove was venerated with everything from ribbons, bells, and also the terracotta sculptures at the base of the tree. Now, I wanted to very importantly talk about the sacred tree groves, because what I've spoken about to date is about individual trees, even though that bamboo grove was like a mini forest. Sacred tree groves are incredibly important in India because they've had the ability to protect hundreds of acres of land. Forests have been protected in India when they have been designated as a sacred grove, and this is very, very important. Apparently, India has the most sacred groves of any other place in the world. I read one at one place that it was there are 100,000 sacred groves across the country, some which might only be quite small, maybe an acre, but some that can be multiple acres. And this particular one is 64 acres in Kerala. And of course in Tamil Nadu, most villages have a sacred grove. The sacred groves are very much about the mother goddess and her warriors. So, for example, this is, I should mention the one in Kerala, the trees are considered like the army for the gods, called Budagana in Kerala. This is actually a sacred grove in Tamil Nadu, and the name of the sacred groves anyway, sorry. Basically, this relates to INR, and I'm sure any of you who have been to Tamil Nadu would have witnessed these amazing sculptures, terracotta sculptures at the base of the tree. These are the warriors of the mother goddess that are protecting the land, and people would actually come to gift these, for example, terracotta horses, these beautiful, beautiful sculptures, to INR in the wish for a good harvest, and also for health and protection of the land. It is an ancient, it dates back to the ancient Dravidian times of India, so it's a very ancient practice. And here you can see some examples of older sacred horses that have been overgrown by the bushland. And then, of course, up in Himachal Pradesh, the deodar tree is considered particularly sacred, which is like the cedar tree. And here it's metal objects that are gifted to, and again, the deities that reside in these trees are known to be they protect the forest. And so people will come and gift anything made of metal to these particular trees. Now, of course, the indigenous peoples of India have been crucial in the protection of land across the country. I also travelled in Chhattisgarh in central India to the Bastar region, which is well known as an important tribal area. And so the Adivasi, and of course in these areas is where you would have the yakshi, which are the spirits that reside in the forest. Okay, so just quickly to finish up, here's some more examples of in Chhattisgarh where these animals, these terracotta animals, are gifted to the tree gods to protect these forests. All right, I'm finishing right there. I've been asked to wrap it up. So, of course, in Australia, we don't have these practices. So I began something called the Tree Veneration Society, which we now have nearly 50 members. And I certainly invite people to try something like this in India. The idea of trying to get people to really perceive trees and forests differently. And we do that through workshops, through exhibitions, through performances, and things like that, which especially children find very, very valuable. So anyway, I'll hand over to. Okay.
Thanks, Louise. Look, it might just have seemed like a bunch of trees that were venerated, but in fact, it was an attitude to life itself. That was the way we lived. That was what we learnt. And now we are at a point where unlearning that would be the equivalent of suicide, because climate change and biodiversity are two sides of one coin. And you talk of trees, the trees will not be able to propagate other than using wind and rain unless it has insects, butterflies, bees, beetles, ants, you name it. So when people venerated those trees, Louise, over there, they were actually deeply scientific, because even today, if you go through to all the scientists of the world, what they're suggesting is you keep core areas where creatures just keep multiplying, then you have buffer areas around which might be used. And I have personally, I've walked in Bastar, and in Abujmar, a young boy was our guide, and we had to go from here to there. It was maybe about 800 meters or maybe a kilometer at best. But he made us walk 6.5 kilometers around because he says, my ancestors' spirits will be disturbed. That was a core area. That was where nature was doing what it was doing 150,000 years ago, without the interference of the most dangerous animal in the world, which is us. So, Tara, you and I have both been inspired by one man called Dr. Salim Ali. You have used science and you married your science to your writing, and you are a megaphone for nature. Tell them your story.
Thank you so much, Bittu, and thank you so much for your wonderful book. I'm very sorry I haven't been able to look at it yet, but I did manage to see some of it online, and I think it's absolutely extraordinary that you have picked up something that is so special for India. You know, the reverence for trees, the reverence for nature in general, which is so inherent to us. And thank you. Firstly, really, I should thank the AKLF for inviting me here. I'm very, very thrilled. Calcutta for me is second home, and I always so delighted to be here, and I'm very, very thrilled to be part of this festival today. So, Bittu, you asked me for my story. It's 75 years old, so you're in for a long session here, which I promise I will not make it so long. But I have to tell you that it was trees that really got me interested in birds. Now, I'm a bird person, if you want to put it that way. And it was my grandfather had a big house with a lot of big trees in it, and many of them were fig trees, you know. They were ficus. And they full of birds, colorful birds, golden orioles, and those days there were Jerdon's chloropsis, now called something else, called the leaf bird. And it fascinated me as a child, you know. I just would look at them and I was quite interested. And my grandfather, he had a copy of Salim Ali's book of Indian birds, which he kept locked up in a cupboard. And we grandchildren were not allowed to open that cupboard. So what we would do slyly, when he was sleeping in the afternoon, we would somehow steal the key, open the cupboard, and I would look up Salim Ali's book and see what were the birds that I saw, put it safely back, lock it up again, and pretend to be very, you know, innocent after all that. So that was my first experience of learning about birds, and it was from the trees. It was from the trees that were there, and I realized how very, very important it was to have this kind of greenery around us all the time, and how you connect immediately to nature through that. And after that, that's what you know, got me into learning zoology and getting into ornithology as a subject. And I was deeply, deeply, deeply grateful and honored to have been a student of Dr. Salim Ali, who Mr. Bittu Sahgal knows better than I do. He's worked with him as well. And we have a very common love for whom we call the old man. He was, and I actually met him only when he was very old, and he took me on as a student when he was 88 years old, and he guided me the whole time. Now Salim Ali, you know, he was a scientist, and he was he was an honorary professor He never got a PhD degree, but he was called Dr. Salim Ali because he had so many honorary degrees. And he had this wonderful way of communicating his science. And I think that is how what you're now doing, Louise, is you're communicating something to others through the medium of art, through the medium of your experience. So he communicated through the medium of his knowledge, his deep, deep knowledge. And he had this very engaging way of writing in a way that, in fact, Bittu was saying, when you read his writing, you're almost like watching a movie. And that's how it should be. And you're able to communicate so well. Or he would give radio talks, or he would give, and he was a scientist who didn't believe in, sort of academic research, which had to be purely within the walls of academia. He wanted that research to come out. So my point here is that there's no contradiction between this kind of love of nature, veneration of nature, and ornamentation of nature. Because ornamentation, as you called it, the adoration, and you had a very beautiful word for it, the ornamentation of nature, is when you love something, you want to look after it. You want to decorate it sometimes, Even, we like to put a funny collar on your pet dog, it's like that. Whatever you love, or you decorate your home. So I think all those are signs of love. They are signs of understanding that something is precious. So I think that is what we have to now realize. And Dr. Salim Ali, when he taught me, he would say that don't think that man is separate from nature. The human ecology is as important as nature ecology. And what you said about sacred groves, they are actually whole ecosystems. They are not just the trees, they are the worms, they are the fungi, they are everything that gives the soil the richness for the trees to grow. And they are the birds that look after the trees as well. So that has been my inspiration, and that hopefully that will be the work that I continue with.
You see how underspoken she is. I know how deep she's gone into this. And I'll tell you this, that as far as nature is concerned, our generation, my generation, yours too, and well, essentially what we are engaged in right now is intergenerational colonization. We are colonizing. How many people over here, can you put up your hand, are you under the age of 30? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Look, I'm telling you something. We owe you an apology. We have hopelessly mismanaged your world. And what we're trying to do now is that what we want is, we want the artists, the performers, the singers, the dancers, the storytellers to come out to Anjum, events like this, circumstances like this, and exhibitions, and yes, this phone as well, very powerful tool. Let's use it right. Look, you have to know that what you have heard from these two women today has just one single truth, elementary truth, lying hard and still behind their words. Nature can fix itself. It merely needs us to get out of the way. If you are a storyteller and you haven't told that story yet, then get curious. If I had my opportunity to give children a gift, I would give them the gift of curiosity. Because if you don't have curiosity, you take anything an elder tells you for granted. And do not listen to my generation when they tell you that the sources of life are nothing other than the sources of commerce. That's raw material. You can use it. And you, under 30s, shall I tell you something? There is not one single species on earth that has the technology to waste. It's only us Homo sapiens, the wise ones. In fact, we're running a program now to change that, Louise. And we're asking kids to go to the nomenclature guys and say, why not Homo stultus? Why not Homo stupidus? Because who else would destroy their own home? So at this point, we need the voices of you young guys. And if there are artists among you and there are performers among you, use what you will use, what you are good at. Don't try to become a forest officer. If you don't know how to write poetry and you don't like poetry, don't try to be a poet. You do what is special in you, with your curiosity, with your love for nature, and it's magical. Can I ask you guys, all of you, just for 30 seconds, shut your eyes, and take just 3 deep breaths. Yes, yoga tells you to do that, and yes, you do get calm and your heartbeat lowers down. But the truth is that right now I'm hearing a generator somewhere, but I also heard a lot of birds, and sometimes their communications are nothing more than. And if we keep on making noise pollution is not just a city thing. It's necessary when we go and listen to the performances in a theater. You're told switch off your phones, don't make a noise, and if you're coughing a lot, then cough like this. If we allow nature to do what it does, we have the solutions lying right there. During the pandemic, in something like about 5-7 months, the Yamuna, you could look 5 feet down underneath it in parts. The air, suddenly the skies became blue. Yes, we got traumatized. Yes, please. In fact, I would put it to you like this, that we worshipped nature, and it's about time that the most scientific thing we can do is to go back, and you don't have to go and kneel before it, you just have to go there and appreciate it and understand it. Louise, would you like to just talk about the sacred groves?
Yeah, just briefly. I didn't mention that, of course, sacred groves have existed across the planet. In Europe, for example, there were many sacred groves. Prior to the Middle Ages, German forests were worshipped. The Celts had sacred groves. They were all deforested. All of Europe has been deforested because I'm afraid it was the Catholic Church that destroyed the sacred groves in medieval times. So there are no indigenous trees in Europe. One of the wonderful things you have here in India is that because of your belief system or ancient belief systems, these groves have continued to exist. But unfortunately, with changes in Indian society, more and more people are not believing in these things, and there is an instance, and I'm sorry to tell you that, for example, in Kerala, where the value of land has gone up 2,000%, people are paying Brahmins a lot of money to desacralize the sacred groves so that people can sell the land. These are the kind of things that need to stop. I don't advocate necessarily that we all need to go back and believe in ancient religious systems, but for me, I believe in the spirituality of nature, the importance of nature. We must protect these groves. These forests are incredibly important to not only India but to the rest of the world because of their ability to give oxygen and sequester carbon dioxide, and also to clean our waters and to protect the soil and all the animals and insects that live there. So, I mean, I call on everyone to do whatever they can to protect whatever sacred groves still exist here.
Wonderful. Tara, birds.
Yes.
They're your life.
Absolutely, thank you. So, there's actually to follow up on what is about sacred groves. Just one example that I haven't been to many, but the one that I went to, I was just astounded. It was barren land all around, but just when you entered the grove or just entered the periphery of the grove, you could see a rivulet, a stream. You know, so then you realize all these things by your own self sometimes. Sometimes you don't even need, you're not told sometimes if you have to experience. That I realized that just this grove, there was water under it. Whereas all around there were fields and things which had to be irrigated separately. And that rivulet is probably irrigating one farmer's field. So apart from I think the ancients, people, the Adivasis and the wisdom of the older sages would have said, look after these for their spiritual value. as deities inside. But now we have to also, but science has proved that all that is right. It's not just whimsical. It is not just stories. It is real that a sacred grove, a tree, the reason why it was considered sacred is because it gives water underneath. In fact, I'd gone to Ranthambore, Bittu once, and this tiger sanctuary, tiger wildlife park, and the villagers around it, they were worried that tigers were coming into their village. So there was one thought, somebody, I don't know who had that thought, okay, why don't we deforest the whole area around the village, around your village, make it completely bare of trees. So if you see a tiger, you can see a tiger coming in. So now, it's really a harebrained idea. And the village people there, they immediately knew the harebrained idea. Because they said, "Nahi, is ped ke niche pani hai." You know, she said, "There's water under the tree. We don't want you to remove the trees there." And I mean, they have their own ways of course, very difficult for them if tigers come into the village, but they realize that is not the way out. That's not the way to do it. So I think this kind of communication, this kind of, as you said, you know, passing on the messages in a way that people understand, the people that youth understand. And I must also tell you that I come from Chennai, and there's some wonderful people there. There's a whole group of what are called youth wilderness walk volunteers. Okay. And so what they do is they take people, young people, they're all students, they're all college students, who take people in their own neighborhood. And in the urban, they are called urban youth nature walk, some big thing like that, wild wilderness. And they're showing people that there's wilderness even in a city. You know, it's not just, it's plants, it's butterflies, it's dragonflies, it's millipedes and centipedes and, you know, all those things. So people understand that this is what is made, this is what life is made of. It's not just we, it's not just humans. It's, we are living among all these things, among all these different creatures. And so that's really hopeful that these young people are actually taking, you know, older people out and children out. So even older people understand all this. And there's this remarkable young man who also won your Green Teacher Award, the Sanctuary Green Teacher Award. His name is Yuvan. And he has been promoting something called tree meditation. And so he says, you just, exactly what you said, you sit under a tree and you breathe. And then you realize that the oxygen is coming from the tree. And when you breathe out, it's going back to the tree. So that's the connect that we have with nature, and we can never leave that. And this is the kind of future hope that we have, that people understand it. They understand it in their own way. In their own way. Earlier, people understood it through religious or through sacredness. Then later, people understood it through science. Maybe people understand it just because it's there to be understood.
You know, the boy she spoke about, this young man, he came up with, just casually, in conversation, came up with a simple one-liner. He said you can calculate, you know, climate change, you calculate it with carbon, but his mother tongue is water. And that became such a powerful statement. It's been picked up. We're now taking it to 500,000 children and explaining the connections between trees, between the percolation, between aquifers, between rivers in the sky, all these things, and it's from young people. And they know for a fact that things will repair if we don't damage them. But honestly, amongst you guys, if you're an artist, use your art. If you're a poet, use your poetry. And there must be some questions that you guys have. If there are any, we have these two wonderful women here who will be very happy to answer them. Well, I will. If I can't answer, I'll ask you to answer, all right? Any questions? Jayant, there's always a 30-second pause when the first question is asked for. But there we are.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
I'm Aditya. Among other things, I also run a blog on sustainability, right? Now, thing is, I think major problems that cities are, not the cities are facing, that the trees, the environment is facing, is urbanization and extension of the cities into, you know, like green areas. Like I happened to go to Joka once and I saw there's a lot of greenery out there, the kind you find in Shantiniketan. But people are building houses there, complexes are coming up. So gradually the city is extending into greener pastures. In Bombay, they have this Borivali National Park, right? They have totally barricaded the area. But still, buildings keep encroaching into these spaces. So what are your thoughts on it? How do we actually maintain the greenery at the same time, not lose out on industrial progress and urbanization also?
I'll take that one. I'll tell you this, there's only one way that can be stopped. We've got a whole crop of young people, 18 years and above, who are going to be the next people who are going to decide where politics goes, where development goes, where India goes, what we think. So when we run a program called Kids for Tigers, it's been 20 years and many of those kids are now 32 and 35 and 36 years old. I'm not saying that all the damage my generation did, it's the responsibility of the young. I am saying that the young have the legitimacy to speak. So when an old guy goes there with white hair and says you should not do this, say you've had your fun, or not the kids. My own generation is telling me this, the guys who have learned to game the system. But when young people speak out, that becomes a very powerful voice. The courts listen to you, the politicians listen to you. Even the children of the largest businesses, even if they're involved in carbon, they are the ones trying to change things. So first, believe, and you're included in the young, by the way. So you believe that it will be a change, because you don't have to walk a mile to do it. You have to walk 3 or 4 steps towards what nature wants, and nature will walk all the other steps and carry you with it. It really does work. It really does work.
I was just going to mention, of course, everyone needs to be housed, but we need to build up rather than out.
To add to what you said, Bittu, is that you're right, the sustainability is really one of the very biggest issues really in our country, maybe other countries as well. But a lot of NGOs, a lot of organizations, like the ones that I belong to, Bombay Naturalist Society, the Wildlife Trust of India, WWF, all these, one major contribution that they can make is that they do studies of those areas and they prepare reports. And those reports become extremely valuable. And you can always quote the report. And that puts a stay sometimes. Like near Chennai, where I come from, there was an estuary where they wanted to build a port. And now MN, Madras Natural Society, we all went out there and did a bird survey. And we found that there were 6 or 7 endangered, critically endangered species of birds over there. And so when you put that down, then you can connect it to some of the wildlife protection acts. And then when that gets connected, then it's very hard for an industry or a housing complex to come up in that area. So I think this is the kind of contribution that that people have to make now to make sure that development is sustainable.
Maybe the media has to take up the issue.
The media is taking up the issue. There was a question just behind you. Yeah, Jan?
Hi, this question is for Ms. Gandhi, primarily, but generally, anybody who's willing to answer it. It's been some years now since I saw it. Will someone tell me where I can find a sparrow?
Come on, Tara, that's your,
yes,
that's part of the love of your life.
Yes, yes. Please come to Chennai. There are still some spots in Chennai where there are sparrows. And I was extremely very pleased to see that in the hills, I go to Nilgiris quite a lot. And there are a lot of sparrows in the Nilgiris. So these are 2 places I would definitely say for sure there are sparrows. And so it's not such a dire strait after all. They have disappeared a lot in the cities. Cities, they've disappeared a lot. in the center of cities, where I remember that sparrows used to be nesting on my fan, and I remember that when I was young, but it's not any longer, I'm sure. But there are spots in the city, but mostly they are out in the hills and other areas.
So we need scientists to tell us precisely why, but there are some things that your gut tells you why. Everything that you eat now, the grain you buy now, you're buying it in plastic and nothing spills over. When you used to take these things across cities, you'd find grain being dropped as you went along like nuts in May, you know. And the sparrows had food to eat. They had hedgerows in which to nest. They had all. So the moment we start concretizing, the moment we start plasticizing, the moment we start cementing, then the sparrows are just the early warning to tell you that, look, Jacko, the fate that you have in plan for us, probably you're next. There was a question there. They'll come back, Ajay. The sparrows are coming back.
Yeah. First, I want to express appreciation to the two ladies for sharing their thoughts. It's been inspiring and valuable. But I do want to take issue with the moderator. And my issue is the following. I think along with concretization, plasticization, etc., our biggest bane in cities today is it's somebody else's problem. Whether we point to children, whether we point to the next generation or the media, it's always somebody else who has to come and solve the problem, not us. Which is unfortunate because right under our noses, it's not just human evolution which is causing damage, but it is planned, criminal, culpable violation of basic laws. I mean, look at this park, for instance. It's wonderful to be sitting around trees, sitting with trees around us, but when you come here on a normal day, you will be shocked to see the extent of concretization in this park. As we speak right now, less than 500 meters away, the same municipal corporation that runs this park is ruining another park in the name of a flower show. Okay, this is a park which was shut down for 30 years and then reopened, and now it's being recaptured in a sense by the city powers that be. So I think what we need to recognize is the urgency of the situation. I think what Bittu raised very well was the need to find ways for people to get more involved with solution seeking. But I think what is missing in the storytelling approach is that, damn it, we are running out of time. There is urgency which we cannot afford to ignore. And my plea to everyone who's willing to listen is that that urgency should galvanize us, even if it's in small ways. But we need to seize the moment and do something about problems that we see around us.
I mean, how right can you be? I mean, everybody really, he deserves that one, you know. Everyone thinks somebody else will fix the problem. You're an environmentalist, so why don't you go and solve all the problems of the world? Every one of us here is an environmentalist. And if a lot of us do a little, a lot gets done. So do what you can do. The children are doing what they can do. They write letters to prime ministers, they write letters to editors. That's all they can do right now. But believe me, those of us here, sitting right here, we are a power base ourselves, provided we feel that we're the ones who are going to do the doing. So each one of us can do more, and if we can't do everything, remember what Gandhi had said. He said almost words, not exactly as I'm saying it, he said the worst of the lot are those who do nothing because they can't do everything. So you do whatever it is you can do, and like the diversity of a forest, each one of us will do different things. But those different things have one particular North Star towards which we are going, and make this a more natural, more hospitable, a more welcoming, a happier world. And that is a very good religion to hang on to, I would imagine. Right?
I was just going to finish by saying we have a wonderful ex-politician called Bob Brown in Australia who started the Greens Party. He now says that everyone has to become an activist. Everyone.
Yep. Look, it's going to be all right, by the way. it's going to be all right, and the reason it's going to be all right is very straightforward. The ability to do damage is going to be taken away, because even to damage the earth they need water. And whether it's for a power plant, whether it's for a building, whether it's for cement, and water is becoming a very scarce resource. So there will be a slowing down from that side, but we need an acceleration, as you said, Pradeep, from this side. It has to be done. All right? Tara?
Yes, thank you.
Last word?
Time's up.
Time's up? Time's up, it says. All right. Thank you very much, guys. And remember, do whatever you do, do something today. Just resolve you're going to do something. Thank you. All right, there we go. All right.
Can we please have a round of applause for the session Green Earth with Louise Fowler-Smith, Tara Gandhi and Bittu Sahgal. This session was supported by the Australian Consulate-General, Kolkata. Thank you.